but about something far more hidden. A global economic machine that had been quietly collapsing for decades, because behind every trench, every soldier, every empire, there was a bill coming due one the world's superpowers could no longer pay. And today, the same financial pattern is emerging again, setting the stage to understand why the world plunged into the Great War. We need to step back long before 1914 into an era of empires obsessed not with glory, but with profit. Britain, controlling a quarter of Earth. Germany, rising fast with new industry. France, desperate to protect its colonial wealth. Russia, drowning in debt. And Austria-Hungary, a dying empire held together by borrowed money and fading prestige. They all publicly talked about honor, privately. They talked about markets, resources, and credit. And the twist is this: by the late 1800s, these empires weren't competing on the battlefield, they were competing on balance sheets. Every nation needed more land, more labor, more raw materials, or they risked collapse. But no one expected how violently this race for economic survival would end. Origins: the economic pressure cooker. The Industrial Revolution created massive wealth, but also massive fragility. Nations needed oil for navies, cotton for factories, metals for weapons, and markets for exports. Britain's empire gave it a head start. Germany, lacking colonies, tried to catch up by building Europe's strongest manufacturing system. France poured money into Africa and Indochina. Russia attempted industrialization at breakneck speed, financed almost entirely by foreign loans. When one nation expanded, another felt threatened. And when Germany announced its navy would challenge Britain's sea dominance, the economic pressure became unbearable. Empires began to feel like businesses fighting bankruptcy. RISE, the point of nitrogen monoxide return between 1900 and 1913, global military spending doubled. Millions of soldiers were mobilized on paper. Railroads were designed specifically for war transport, and secret economic agreements tied nations' survival to their allies. Once mobilization began, economies were locked into war. Stopping would mean economic collapse. Going forward meant catastrophe. This is why the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand wasn't the cause of war. It was merely the spark that fell on dry financial kindling. Breaking point when economic rivalry became total war. When the first shots were fired, nations didn't expect a long war. They believed economic strength alone would ensure victory, but they miscalculated. Industrial warfare consumed resources at unimaginable rates: steel, coal, fuel, food, and of course, credit. Within months, treasuries drained. Nations turned to citizens, then to banks, then to foreign lenders. Germany starved under blockade. Russia's economy collapsed, triggering revolution. Britain mortgaged its empire to pay for U.S. supplies. France burned through generations of wealth. The true cost of power was finally exposed. Fallout. The price after the guns fell silent. By 1918, the world wasn't just wounded, it was financially shattered. Debt soared, currencies devalued. Empires fell. Germany, Russia, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman. Britain never regained its global economic dominance. And the peace treaty? Instead of rebuilding stability, it created deeper financial wounds, especially for Germany, setting the stage for the next global tragedy. Failed fixes and the return of old patterns throughout the 1920s and 1930s. World leaders tried to patch the economy: reparations plans, new currencies, gold standard experiments. All failed. Why? Because the underlying issue remained. Empires had built economies that required endless expansion. The world simply ran out of new places to exploit. Modern parallels, the patterns repeat. Here's where it gets disturbing. Today, the largest economies also rely on expansion of markets, resources, and debt. Global military spending is at its highest level in decades. Energy competition is escalating. Trade blocs are hardening, and world debt has reached historic highs. Just like before 1914, nations depend on fragile systems of supply, credit, and geopolitical pressure. History's warning is clear and uncomfortably familiar. 3 takeaways: the Great War was not inevitable, but economic stress made peace impossible. Empires fall not from weakness but from overextension. When nations compete for economic survival, conflict becomes a financial strategy. Closing warning: if we ignore the financial roots of global conflict, we risk repeating the same catastrophic patterns, only this time with far more powerful weapons and far more fragile economies. Call to action. If you want more deep, honest investigations into history's hidden economic engines, subscribe, share this video, and help bring these buried truths back into the light.